Hey guys, so I wanted to go over how we decided to tie this 50-foot Hatteras up to this fixed dock here. We're going to be doing a lot more videos of this and just some different ways and techniques to tie your boat up at different types of docks, lines, fenders, the whole deal, just so you can get a good idea of different ways to do it and what's right and what's wrong. We pulled into this dock last night. It was pitch black dark, and I knew it was a fixed dock right away, obviously by the pilings. One thing I did not know about this dock were that these pilings are actually concrete. So they have no flex and no give. So always be aware of the type of piling that you're pulling up to, because concrete versus wood is a very big difference. And of course, you need to know whether it's a fixed dock or a floating dock, because all of that is going to determine the instructions you give to your mate before you're pulling up. So on this fixed dock, concrete pilings, we'll start at the bow here. And we've got a southeast wind, so it's blowing down this creek, down off this way. With the bow line, we simply wrapped it around this piling a few times, probably 3 or 4 times, and then we did 2 hitches, just like a cleat hitch, except you do a hitch on a piling and you run that line under itself, and we did that twice. And that's a good secure tie for an overnight tie or a temporary tie. I wouldn't want to leave the boat for a month like this, but for a day or two when you're with the boat, it's just fine. Since this boat does not have a bow thruster, and last night this wind was pushing me off the dock, when I rotated it and came in here, this was the first line that I had him secure. I ran up to this piling. He got this line on the piling in somewhat of a loose fashion. That way I can still work off of it. And then this line was tight, and then I simply brought the stern over. Once I brought the stern over, once he had the bow line loosely connected to this piling, we secured the rear spring. And this Hatteras has huge cleats. Very large cleats. So when you have a boat with large cleats like this, it's totally fine to just loop the line around the cleat. You don't have to go through like most people think you do. This line's not going to go anywhere wrapped around this cleat. And we ran it back to this piling and did the same thing, wrapped it around the piling a few times, and then we did 2 hitches with that line. The next line we did here was the forward spring. Now you're probably like, why are they so far apart? Well, the simple answer is we were on the boat when we set this forward spring. We were not down here. So he set the forward spring up top, and this is preventing the boat from walking this way. Rear spring line's preventing the boat from walking this way. And keep in mind, the bow line was already on. Now the stern line here, we did it a little differently because we were just gonna be here a night or two. Normally what I would do is I would extend a line from the port stern cleat, run it across or under the dinghy, back over to this piling. That's a better pulling effect, and you don't have to worry about it with the tide because the line is so long. It's just a better tie for the stern. It'll pull the boat over. But with this situation, I didn't really want to run the line over the dinghy, so we came from the cleat, we came around the piling, and back to the cleat. Line will slide up and down with the piling. Now, you don't want to do this long term. This is a temporary tie situation. I have eyes on the boat at all times. I'm not leaving the boat. And of course, as far as the lines, it always depends on where you're at in the world and the tide situation. Right now, I'm in Apalachicola, Florida. It's only about a 2-foot tide or less. It's not much at all. So that's why I can get away with some of these different techniques. If it was Savannah, Georgia, and you have a 7-foot tide, I would not be able to get away with this. I would need to do the technique that I was discussing before and go from that piling over to the other side, the port side of the boat, port side stern cleat. So it all depends where you are tidally. If it's more tidal and you have a bigger swing in the tide, your lines need to be longer. Not necessarily more slack in the line, not slack, length. How long is the line? How high and low will that line travel up and down before it gets tight enough to break and not do its job? Another tip and a technique that I like to use sometimes, and it all depends on where your shore power cord is, but I like to drape the shore power cord over the dock line. This could be at the stern. At this boat, it's midship, but a lot of times that line will help keep that shore power line picked up so it won't ever fall in the water. And of course, you don't want shore power cord in the water because it creates galvanic corrosion and electrolysis. Now let's talk about the fender setup here. We're at a fixed dock. Last night when I came and docked the boat, I did not have fenders set out ahead of time. You never want to set your fenders out over the side of the boat when you're pulling up to a fixed dock. Number one, you don't know where the boat's going to land in relationship to the pilings, because the pilings is going to be the first thing to touch the boat at the rub rail. Number two, the fenders can get caught, such as this, and do that while you're trying to dock, and that will throw off the captain, or a line could break or something else could break, and that's even worse. Or a line could break and the fender could get caught or popped or pinched. This is the proper way to tie that fender up when you're at a fixed dock. We've got it separated nicely. We've got the fender hanging horizontally, tied with 2 clove hitches at the rail. This fender is a little different. This particular fender, I didn't have enough line to do that. It had a shorter piece of line on this fender, so I couldn't run both ends back to the rail to turn it horizontally, which is another reason why it's really important to make sure that you have enough line coming off that fender so you can use it horizontally or vertically. So because I've got the springs real nice, this is working just fine in a vertical position on this piling. It hasn't moved all night. And for the stern fender, we did it a little differently here as well, because I don't have anywhere to hang these fenders except for the stern cleat here. So we simply just, and this is my least favorite way of doing this, but we simply just tied the fender in a horizontal fashion around this piling, just in case the boat comes over. Once again, it's not a big deal if the rub rail makes contact with the piling. That's what it's for. But just to give it a little bit more protection and cushion, we tied it to the piling here at the base. So there's a few different techniques here that we use to tie up this boat. Obviously, there's probably 1,000 more ways you could do this. Everybody's got their own way, but this is what worked for us in this situation. It's easy. It was quick. Once again, we're with the boat. I have eyes on the boat most of the time. We have our fenders spaced properly. The boat can't get against the piling. Leave your comments below if you have a different opinion or you have a different technique or way you would have tied this boat up. Would love to hear them.